Mother. Wife.
Air Force veteran.
Gun rights advocate.
This is Stacy on the Right. Here's your host, Stacy Washington.
Welcome back to Stacy on the Right, hour number 3. Joining the program, waiting patiently, Jack Tomczak, Vice President of Americans for Citizen Voting and host of the Jack Tomczak podcast. You can follow him at all the places at Jack Tomczak, at Jack Tomczak. Jack, welcome to the program.
Jerome, thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So I opened the show with the horrific and senseless and unnecessary, completely murder of Sheridan Gorman, 18 years old, doing all the right things, by a monster who shouldn't have been in this country. And, you know, I didn't play the audio, but essentially walked the audience, Jack, through Hakeem Jeffries being asked about this monster. And if he's found convicted, should he be deported from the country? And Hakeem Jeffries was like, well, I got to look at the case. And that basically sums it up. I mean, the Democrats today just kind of want people like this Jose Medina to be in this country. And why would they want him to be in the country? Well, eventually they want him to vote in elections in this country. I love what you and your organization have cooking. We know about the Save America Act, but explain this avenue by which there will be an amendment to the Constitution to just stop all non-citizens from voting in U.S. elections.
Okay, so the first thing is that what we at Americans for Citizen Voting are doing is completely different than anything you've ever heard of before, and we're looking at the issue of non-citizen voting in a way that nobody's ever looked at before.
Yeah.
Like the SAVE Act and a lot of the voter integrity groups on the right are trying to make sure that non-citizens don't vote illegally and commit voter fraud, which is great. What we're doing is we're trying to make sure that non-citizens are not allowed to vote legally in federal elections. It sounds crazy, but there is a very real path to non-citizens being allowed to legally vote for elections for the House of Representatives and Senate in Congress. The U.S. Constitution does not require that voters be citizens of the United States. Everybody assumes it does, but that is not the case. The Constitution, in Article 1, Section 2, says that for voting for the House of Representatives, and it says the exact same thing in the 17th Amendment, when describing who is eligible to vote for the Senate, it says, whoever a state lets vote for their state's most numerous legislative body gets to vote for Congress. So what does that mean?
Yeah.
That means that if a state, let's say California, decides to let non-citizens vote legally for their House of Representatives, their state house, the moment they do that, all those non-citizens would be instantly and automatically eligible to vote for Congress. And because it's in the Constitution that that's how the system works, there isn't a statute that the state could pass to separate the two, and there isn't a statute that the federal government could pass to separate the two. Voter eligibility for your state's largest elected body, which is always the state house or your assembly, unless you're weird like Nebraska, that eligibility is always tied to eligibility to vote for Congress. And the only thing that can sever that tie is amending the U.S. Constitution, which is what we're trying to do.
You know, California is an interesting example because they essentially have like an indifference policy where you don't actually need the ID to vote at all. And, you know, it just causes all kinds of problems. I love, Jack, the second plank in your proposal, closing the constitutional loophole where states could allow non-citizens to vote in state elections, because we've seen examples here, just I think in the last year or two, in places like New York City, where it's been adjudicated in the courts. I mean, these states, these lawmakers, I mean, they really do want illegal immigrants or non-citizens, if you will, to vote in these elections. It's not like some phantom conspiracy just born out of fake fear.
And the case in New York City was the one time a court said no to non-citizen voting, because non-citizen voting is legal in 4 states, in 22 cities across those 4 states, including our nation's capital, Washington, D.C. Legal. It's not voter fraud. It is legal. These cities will pass a city law, city ordinance that says non-citizens can vote in the local election. And then that's the case. And in New York, people challenged it, and the court sided with sanity. But in most cases, they don't. And we've seen in the last few years, 3 cities in Connecticut have legalized non-citizen voting, and Washington, D.C. So it's the last few years, there's been an uptick in cities choosing to let non-citizens vote legally. And in Vermont, where these 3 cities did it, they had to ask the state legislature for permission. And the state legislature said yes, but the governor vetoed it. And all 3 times, the legislature overrode that veto.
It's amazing.
So momentum is building, and it's reasonable to think that with all these cities and all these states legalizing non-citizen voting on the municipal level, that eventually one is going to legalize non-citizen voting for state elections, and that would trigger eligibility for congressional elections. Connecticut, in 2023, had a bill that would legalize non-citizen voting for their state legislature. I don't know if the author knew it or not. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. And the bill didn't pass, but had it passed, those non-citizens would be eligible and voting for the House of Representatives and the U.S. Senate. Now, electing the president is different, but it's still up to the states. The eligibility isn't tied to whether or not you can vote for the state legislature, but it is 100% up to the states. So a state could, let's take California because it's such an easy example, could say non-citizens get to vote for president, and boom, that's it. They would be. And there's nothing that anybody can do about it, except for this amendment, which is why we got to get going.
Yeah, no, it's incredible to hear stuff. Jack Tomczak, Vice President of Americans for Citizen Voting, host of the Jack Tomczak. Yeah, no, it's incredible to hear stuff. Jack Tomczak, Vice President of Americans for Citizen Voting, host of the Jack Tomczak podcast, joining the program right now. So you have the constitutional amendment. It's been introduced in the Congress. Give us some details. Who introduced it, and how does it work? Where does it naturally go from here?
Good question. It is House Joint Resolution 152, and Congresswoman Laurel Lee out of Florida is the sponsor. And she used to be the Secretary of State in Florida, so she knows a thing or two about elections.
I voted for her.
Excellent.
Yes.
So how the process works for amending the Constitution is a bill needs to get 2/3 majority in the House and 2/3 majority in the Senate. And if it accomplishes those things, it goes to the states for ratification. Now, every constitutional amendment, except for one, has been ratified by state legislatures, meaning the House and the Senate in each state votes yes or no, and if 3/4 of the states' state legislatures vote yes, it's ratified.
Mm-hmm.
But the one that didn't go that way was the repeal of prohibition, the 21st Amendment back in 1933. And the process that was used for that amendment is the process that is going to be used with this amendment, the United States Citizen Voting Amendment, is after it gets 2/3 in both bodies, then it'll be ratified in popular votes in each state by the people. So rather than the state legislature voting to ratify this, you and I will get to go into the voting booth on Election Day and vote yes or no on whether or not we want to amend the Constitution. And it's only been done once in 1933, and everybody who has cast a vote, in 1933, is no longer with us. So this will be arguably a once-in-a-lifetime experience for the American people.
Yeah, it's amazing. That
If it gets
path,
through Congress.
well, sure, but that path also seems promising, Jack, and you know this because the data points that we've seen on the issue of identity in voting are pretty astronomical. I mean, just the across political preference, people want integrity, I'll say, in voting, and so non-citizens. I mean, you're talking about 90-10 support.
Have you ever seen a Sasquatch, Jerome? A Bigfoot?
Yes. Only in the motion pictures.
A 90-10 political issue is a Sasquatch.
Unicorn, yeah.
I've never, voter ID, that's 80-20. Like,
Yep.
In politics speak, we always say, well, that's an 80-20 issue. Like, 80-20 is the best it could ever be. But this, legitimately, we polled on it, 90-10. 90% of the American people think you should be an American citizen to vote for Congress or the president. So it's not partisan. It's one thing as a country here in our 250th year in existence. It's one thing that we can still come together and be Americans about. Congress needs to give people the chance to vote on it.
I think that's more popular than milk chocolate. I don't think you
I
get
think
9
you're right.
Americans. I love it.
It is the same number. It's got the same approval rating of a quality toothpaste. 9 out of 10 dentists agree we need to amend the U.S. Constitution to make it so only U.S. citizens are allowed to vote.
That is Jack
in federal
Tomczak.
elections.
That is Jack Tomczak. He is the vice president. Excuse me, I almost gave you a promotion.
That'd have been great.
Vice president of Americans for Citizen Voting. Where can people go, Jack, to find that organization online and support if they should?
Thanks for the plug. I would have forgotten. USCitizensVote.org. USCitizensVote.org.